everybody tonight, especially our candidates. We look forward to some lively, engaging conversation. We're just finished getting the sign set up here, and then I'll hand the microphone over to George to get us started. I think so.
Okay. As Brian said, we're happy, we got the audience here, and we're especially happy of the candidates that chose to come tonight to be with us to talk about agricultural and rural issues. So the other two candidates were invited, but for one reason or another, they're not here. So these are the ones that cared about agriculture and rural issues to be here. So we'll have your questions with them. So a couple rules at the start.
2 minutes.
The opening statements are 3 minutes. And Gary and Bert they're the timekeepers. They'll hold up a 30-second sign, and then when they hold up the red sign, it's a 5-second rule. So that's the way we're gonna go in this order. For opening statements, 3 minutes. Questions will have up to 2 minutes for an answer, and then closing statements will be the opposite direction, and they're 2 minutes. So with that, I'd like Keith to get underway.
All right. Let's test this microphone.
Test.
Yes. Good. Working.
Good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Keith Ben, like it says here on the sign, your new Blue Party candidate this year, as I was in 2022 as well. A bit of a brief bio. I was born and raised in Wallaceburg and moved with my family to Port Lambton within Sarnia-Lambton riding in my teen years. After high school, I went away for many years for studies and for work, but I always returned as often as I could to visit family, and also because I love the area so much. And I returned here in 2009 and bought the old family house, and I've been living here ever since, and I don't have any intention to go anywhere else. I hold a doctorate in earth sciences, and I held a tenured academic position at the University of Ottawa for 17 years. Teaching and doing research, and in 2008 I voluntarily left the U of O and pursued my second career in the minerals exploration industry, where I currently work. I've held upper management and executive level roles, and currently I'm a consultant. I'm running in this election because I have watched over the last few decades governments of the NDP, Liberals, and Doug Ford's progressivists take us down a rather dark path towards an ever weaker economy and worsening jobs market. And we see that in spades here today. And I know that New Blue's common sense conservatism will lead us back to the prosperous future to a prosperous future that this province and her people once knew, and that we can achieve once again. We're here tonight for an early election because Doug Ford's in a panic because his political allies, the Liberal NDP government in Ottawa, is spinning down the drain, and Doug Ford knows he's going to follow them very soon if he doesn't get a new mandate. So he's running a campaign of fear where he has designated himself our savior, and he's going to protect us against the bad orange man, and that we all have to fall in line behind him and vote for him. No thanks. In early February, he also promised to save us from the trade war that he himself is encouraging, with a fiscal stimulus of $22 billion of almost, well, probably all borrowed money, blatant vote buying, and creating even more debt for your children and their children to pay off. It's rather shameful, really, that in 2025, we have to listen to candidates making promises that government will build homes for people, where in this province people should be able to get good paying jobs and buy their own homes, and there should be lots of houses being built. We'll talk about that more this evening, I'm sure. I'm here for the challenge of going to Queen's Park to get us back on track. And I'm here ready, willing, and able, and I need your votes. Thank you.
Thank
Rachel Wilsey, and I'm the Sarnia-Lambton candidate, Liberal candidate rather. I come to you with a diverse background, but my focus and passion has always been about advocating for people. I first was a mother before I decided to enter nursing, and nursing became a very strong passion for me. And through the tragic loss of my baby sister, realized that the system is no longer fragmented, it is broken. I've always pursued education as a sideline identity for myself. I always felt I needed something that grew myself and the ways I was as a person. So I pursued an undergraduate in psychology because I wanted to understand how people thought. I wanted to understand the mental health realm a lot better than what I could. And I also wanted to understand my children because we're raising them in a world where it's just too unknown at this point. And I didn't feel satisfied with that, so I realized quickly that the mental health division needed some better policies put in place and a better system put in place and a safe place for the mentally ill to be. And I decided to go into public policy and pursue an undergraduate degree in the University of Windsor's political science program. I did an undergraduate thesis in municipal housing to try to understand how we could develop housing without taking over spaces that are maybe forced for a good deal instead of the passion of the person that owned the land. After that, I decided that I would pursue my master's, and now I'm currently working on a research project to look at pathways out of poverty. As I've been discussing, this is my first time running in a political campaign, and the notion that Liberals encourage people to not work in providing them with social services is not something that I would like. That I would basically like that narrative to change. I would like to understand why people think that way, because if they think that any social services is enough to sustain life at this point in the cost of living that we are within now is not realistic. My goal moving forward is to be an advocate at Queen's Park for Sarnia-Lambton and the rural community. I grew up in the county, out Port Frank Thetford area. I come from a family of farmers as well. And it's very concerning that there isn't a sustainable plan for the rural community. There's not a sustainable plan for the city community either. We're seeing billions of dollars coming out with these $200 checks. I was grateful that many people saw that and realized that that was potentially an ideal time to be paying people as we drop the writ for a snap election coinciding. I ask for your support because I want to be the strong voice for you at Queen's Park, advocating for what specifically is coming to the Sarnia-Lambton region and not necessarily what the platform is announcing.
Thank you, Rachel. Mark? Just before Mark starts, so hold on, Gary. If someone has a question, hold up their hand, and Agnes or Karen will bring them a paper that they can write it on. Go ahead, when you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Lamore. I'm running on behalf of the Ontario Party here in Sarnia-Lambton. For those of you that are not familiar with the Ontario Party, technically it started up in 2018, really began to take off again in 2022 after the mandates and lockdowns that divided many people. Myself personally, I'm 53 years old. I was born in 1971. I was born in Sarnia. I've lived in Sarnia the majority of my life with the exception of 2 years. I've worked in the service retail industry for 30 years. I've worked with people all the time. I ran my own business. Much like you, and I think the one thing that everyone at this table can agree with tonight is that Doug Ford's cheap power grab has brought us all here tonight. I'm not a politician. I've done this now 10 days. So it's a little bit overwhelming at times, but it's nice to get in front and talk to people and share ideas with other people. The Ontario Party's platform is very simple: freedom, family, and faith. Our leader is Derek Sloan. For those of you that are not familiar with him, Derek was a Conservative MP. He stood up for what he believed in, and then the whip had him kicked out of the party. Our chairman, Randy Hillier, he was very much heavy mandate, anti-mandate, freedom fighter, and then Doug Ford had him removed from the party. What we need in government anymore very simply, is transparency and accountability. And it doesn't matter which of the three legacy parties you put in there, you're not going to get that. Whether it is in Ottawa, whether it's redacted freedom, and you just get reports that are blacked out, or whether it's Doug Ford here pandering money to his friends. What we need to do is send people who work for themselves and work for their constituents and not the parties. People aren't getting a say anymore. The parties are driving the bus, and it should be the people. So I'm going to ask for you on the 27th to vote for the Ontario Party and put people back in charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Candace?
Hello, bonjour, bonjour. Thank you to the Lambton Federation of Agriculture for inviting me to participate. I'm Candace Young, your Ontario NUP candidate for Sarnia-Lambton. I grew up in Sarnia. My mom is from Kettle and Stony Point First Nation, and my dad is originally from Nova Scotia. They're both retired teachers, so it's no surprise that I became an educator as well. Growing up here, I've had the opportunity to experience what Lambton County offers. Picking strawberries at Macklin's, watching the Plimpton, Wyoming lit up tractor parade, and going to the Brigden Fair to see the farm animals. The county is more than just agriculture, it's people. As a leader in my union local, I listen to people, and I take their concerns to the table where decisions are made. I negotiate on their behalf. Today, we face down serious challenges that at times can feel like existential threats, from climate change to trade war. These are really big problems that require strong leadership. Ontario should be a province full of opportunity, but after 7 long years in Doug Ford's Ontario, this province has become harder to live and work in. Successive Liberal and Conservative governments have created this mess. Hardworking Ontarians, like our farmers and agricultural workers, are integral and vital to our communities. When I'm shopping at the farmer's market or the grocery store, I'm looking for Canada and Ontario-made products. When I'm getting around the county, I see a range of farms, and I'm reminded how significant the agriculture sector is to our local economy. These are everyday reminders that we need to appreciate our farmers and help you to be successful. And we also need strong public services to support you and your families. But when I look at our public sector, when I see how hard life has become for my neighbors and community, I have questions that need answers. It's sad that our MPP of 18 years has decided to avoid accountability and not attend an event where voters have the opportunity to ask questions. If the incumbent were here, I would ask, why has he failed to use his position to effectively help the people of Sarnia-Lambton? Our MPP doesn't care enough to show up or to speak up for us at Queen's Park. We can change that. The Ontario NDP has a record of standing up to protect farmland, like when Doug Ford tried to destroy the Greenbelt. Standing shoulder to shoulder with farmers, we won that fight. I pledge to be an MPP who cares and listens, an MPP who shows up and speaks up for Sarnia-Lambton.
Thank you, Candace. Tom?
Hello. Hi, my name is Tom Stukas. I'm with the Populist Party of Ontario. Hopefully, I think we'll be more successful in a few years. If Doug Ford brings us to where I think he's going to bring us. So I grew up in Petrolia. I went to high school in Petrolia, so I am familiar with a bit of the farming community, not as much as I'd like. I was a journalist for a number of years. Also, I worked in the restaurant industry, so I have an idea of where the food ends up. So I want to echo my fellow candidates' comments about Bob Bailey, who I read, he says he has better things to do, or he has his time's better spent doing other things. And I was really upset when I read that, because we're in a very crazy times right now, and as a leader, he should be here. Even if he doesn't think it suits his purposes, it's good to see someone on the spot, see how they handle it. Okay. So personally, I think it's a coward move. He should be here. He doesn't have to go to all these events, but he should go to at least one. So I think he's being a coward. I think Doug Ford's acting like a coward. And these are the guys who are going to protect us from Donald Trump. I'm a little afraid. because Donald Trump's going to wipe the floor with these guys if they can't even come and look at their constituents in the eye. Also, we need protection. We have an ultra-globalist, Mark Carney, possibly assuming the Prime Minister's chair soon, and him and his friends in Davos will love to start a war with farmers in Canada, okay? The Populist Party of Ontario supports farmers, because without strong farmers, there is no strong Ontario, okay? They want to take the farming away. Let's not fool ourselves. The Davos crowd, they want us to eat synthetic meat or lab-grown meat, crickets, worms, whatever, and they want all you farmers to do something else. We want to firewall the province, keep our farmers strong, and from these crazy regulations coming from Ottawa, like the fertilizer reduction, the carbon tax, who knows what else they're going to bring by 2030. This is a war on farms, okay? And Doug Ford and Bob Bailey are hiding. And also we have the trade, they're egging on a trade war with Donald Trump. It's going to affect a lot of the agriculture that goes to the States. I seen, when I was stuck in the line at the bridge, I saw pigs and all sorts of produce going over there, nonstop. So these are the guys that are going to protect us? I don't think so. Like, I'm really worried about the next term with Doug Ford and Bob Bailey. I really hope we survive it. And we'll talk more about that, I guess.
Thank you, Tom. John?
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I want to begin tonight by speaking to a fundamental principle that must be protected at all costs: the sanctity of private property. Private property rights are the cornerstone of a free society, and when government tramples them, it is an attack on not just on landowners, but on every hardworking citizen who values liberty, prosperity, and self-determination. Right now, we see this assault happening in Wilmot, where the region of Waterloo is moving to expropriate 770 acres of productive farmland. Let's call this, for what it is, an outright land grab. Bureaucrats and politicians who have never worked a day in the fields believe they have the right to seize private land in the name of economic development. But whose economy are they developing? Certainly not the farmers, certainly not the families who have stewarded this land for generations. The Ontario Libertarian Party would put an immediate stop to these unjust expropriations and ensure that no government has the power to rip away property from its rightful owners. We also stand against any future attempts to curtail farm production, as we saw in the Netherlands last year and the year before, where government imposed environmental policies that force farmers off their lands and reduce food production. We cannot and we will not let this happen here in Ontario. A government that shuts down farms in the name of ideology is a government that has lost all respect for the people it is supposed to serve. And let's talk about the latest craze: government buying up massive amounts of land for electric vehicle production. We believe in free markets, not backroom deals with taxpayers foot the bill while politicians pick winners and losers. If EVs are the future, the private sector will invest in them. But let's not take away farmland and hand it over to corporations while Ontario's food production is impaired. And we are stand for more than just stopping bad policies. We are committed to rolling back the burdens that farmers and businesses already face. The amount of red tape and regulations strangling Ontario's agricultural sector is staggering. Every year, government bureaucrats pile on new rules, new fees, new taxes, making it harder for farmers to do what they do best, which is to feed people. We will cut these barriers, slash unnecessary regulations, and eliminate corporate taxes at the provincial level to ensure that Ontario's producers can thrive, not just survive. Property rights, economic freedom, the ability to work your land without fear of government interference, these are not radical ideas. They are the foundation of a free society. And I promise you this, we will fight tooth and nail to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Nathan?
Yeah, thank you to the Lambton Federation Agriculture for hosting this and for the work you do to support our farm families and rural communities. My name is Nathan Colhoun, and I've spent my life working to build up Sarnia-Lambton, not as a politician, but as a business owner, a former city councilor, and someone who has fought for this community in every way I can. I've built and sustained successful businesses right here in Sarnia, managed multi-million-dollar budgets, and worked hands-on in community organizations and advocacy efforts that support our local economy, workers, and public services. I believe politics should be about people, not parties. And right now, Sarnia-Lambton is being left behind by a system that puts political loyalty before real representation. The challenges you're facing as farmers and business owners and rural residents aren't just policy discussions. They're the reality of red tape, rising costs, and an urban-focused government that just doesn't listen. Here's what I believe. Farmers know their land better than Queen's Park ever will. We need policies that support farming, not regulations designed for Toronto that don't make sense here. Trade stability should be a priority, but too often farmers are the first ones left exposed when tariffs, supply chain disruptions, or labor shortages hit. Energy security is a rural issue. The potential shutdown of Line 5 would drive up heating and production costs, putting strain on families, barns, and greenhouses. I also know that the next generation of farmers is struggling to get in. Land prices are soaring, farm succession planning is getting harder, and if we don't fix this, we risk losing what makes agriculture and Lambton strong. That's why I support expanding funding for new and small farmers, so agriculture stays family-run, not just corporate-controlled, cutting red tape that slows down innovation and expansion, while still protecting the land and water farmers depend on, investing in local processing and infrastructure, so more of what's grown here can be processed and sold here. What makes me different from the other candidates? I'm not here to follow party orders. I can work across the board to support good legislation, no matter who brings it forward. I don't need permission from a leader in Toronto to stand up for what makes sense for Lambton's farmers. So I want to hear from you. What's working? What's broken? And how do we make sure agriculture in Lambton stays strong? Not just today, but for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay, we're gonna move into the question part. So I will ask a question. The first question will start with Rachel. Every candidate gets the opportunity to answer each question, and they have 2 minutes, or up to 2 minutes for their answer as they need it. So the first question is, do you or your party support green energy projects on farmland?
We were at a debate yesterday where it was denied that climate change even exists. So it's alarming to think that this would be a question today of climate change does not exist. I do believe that it does, and I do believe that alternative energy and farming integration and technology advance so that the farmland can be used to its capacity and utilized to benefit that own the land. The agricultural sector has been heavily impacted by some of the federal policies that have been implemented, some of the regulations and taxes, and that's that I would sit here and it's not happened under a Liberal government. There's been significant changes, and one of the hardest challenges for me coming out as a Liberal is to admit that there have been things that have not gone in favor of everybody in the community specifically, but particularly being attached to Justin Trudeau's policies and being a Liberal member has been very, very challenging. And one of the biggest takeaways, if I could get at all under the first question tonight, is that this is not a Justin Trudeau campaign, this is the Sarnia-Lambton campaign for the MPP as a Liberal member. It's under a conservative regulation that we have been managing the province of Ontario and the current status quo. And it's something, again, that the Liberal Party does support as the alternative energy as it relates to the original question.
Check. I remember the slogan back in the old days, good things grow in Ontario. And why do farmers actually farm? It's because they have the freedom to do it and because they're passionate about it. Whether they want to go into the EV business, at the end of the day, farming is business. It's a small business, and the government has to cut out any regulations, cut everything back to make sure that it can thrive. Whether it's in beef, whether it's in the EV sector or whatever. Rachel and I disagree on climate change, and that's okay, because people can have different thoughts. I would think if the climate change was as much of a burden as it is, carbon taxes that have been collected would be making the world better. But look outside tonight, we got 4 feet of snow. You know, climate's changed forever, and I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not going to try to convince you that climate change is real or not. You'll have to do your own research into that and find that out. But farming is a business. Farming, people are passionate about it and they love it, and rightfully so. So if that's what they want to do, the government can certainly support that. But, you know, we need, it's still a business and it still needs to be run.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Ken.
Ontario NDP believes in climate change, and we always have a lens of sustainability whenever we are putting forward our plans, whenever we are thinking of developing or building houses or helping people with having building houses, building supportive housing, all of that, we have this lens of sustainability. And I know the importance of respecting and being a good steward for the land we live on. I will always fight to protect and conserve our land and resources because it benefits all of us. And you know, when agricultural land is lost, it's lost forever. When we talk about developing on farmland, we're hoping to restore the power of conservation authority so that we can review any projects that might threaten farmland or groundwater or wetland systems. And I believe in having everyone's voice at the table when we're talking about sustainability or sustainability projects. Then we need to make sure that everyone's voice is there. I know how to negotiate on behalf of people, and that is what I would do at Queen's Park whenever we have these types of conversations. I would want to make sure that every voice is heard.
Thank you, Candace. Tom?
Okay, yes, I'm not gonna, I'm a bit of a climate skeptic. I've done a lot of reading on the subject, and I do believe there is climate change, but you know, it's always changing. I just don't believe in the man-made theory, and I don't think that we should force the farmers to put up a windmill or solar panels. If they want to, great. If it's gonna make their farm more sustainable and more cost efficient, great. But I will never force them, our party would never force them to do something like this if it's not gonna benefit their farm. It makes no sense when coal plants in China are pumping out whatever, I don't know, pollution nonstop to bug a Lambton County farmer, say you need to put a windmill, we're gonna shut you down and you're gonna reduce your yields and this and that. No, would never happen. If I'm all for sustainability, if you can make your farm more efficient and make more profit, increase your yields, and put some kind of renewable energy or whatever on your farm, and it's integrated and it works, great, but we will never force you to do that. And I guarantee, like, the climate guys in Ottawa and Davos will want to force a lot of these solutions onto the farmers, and that's, at the same time, China, India, and all them are polluting like crazy. And we're talking about pollution here, not necessarily climate change, but pollution. I'm against pollution. But we shouldn't sacrifice our farms and for an unrealizable goal, which is saving the environment when China and them aren't doing anything. And that's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Scott?
Would you be kind enough to repeat the question? Because based on the answers you got, I'm no longer sure I understand what the heck's going on.
No problem. It says, do you and your party support green energy projects on farmland?
Right. Well, okay. So the answer to this is actually very simple. We at the Libertarian Party are 100% opposed to any form of coercive measure, right? So if the question is in the context of, do you support the government mandating things? The answer is a hard no. Now, but we're all about freedom. If a farmer wants to install whatever it is that suits their fancy without subsidy, they are welcome to it. Pretty simple. It's about freedom and avoiding coercion. Nothing imposed by the government on the farmer. Can't make it any clearer than that.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Nathan?
No problem. I'm glad you asked to have the question repeated. I didn't know where we were going either for a second. For me, green energy projects on farmland need to be led by farmers, not dictated by Toronto. So if solar, wind, or other renewable projects help farm operations stay sustainable, lower costs, and provide a stable income stream, then farmers should have the choice to participate. But too often, these projects are designed without farmers in mind, leading to restrictions on land use, long-term lease agreements that benefit corporations over landlords, and a loss of prime agricultural land. So I support green energy that works with farmers, not against them. That means ensuring these projects don't take away productive land, farmers have control over their own property, and energy companies aren't the only ones profiting from rural Ontario's resources.
Thank you, Nathan. Keith?
We need to recognize officially, I would say, that farmland is a non-renewable natural resource. Not only is it a non-renewable natural resource, it's a natural resource we need for our very survival. And the idea of implanting industrial wind turbines, or I think even worse, giant solar installations on high-quality farmland is absolutely out of the question. Once you do that, that farmland is ruined. And by the way, these installations are not green and they're not renewable. Okay, you have to mine all the stuff that goes in. Now, I'm not against mining. I work in the minerals industry. But remember, you have to mine all that stuff that you use to make those solar panels and those wind turbines and other grifting things. And then, after their 20-year lifespan, roughly, what happens to them? Well, the bulk of it goes into landfills. How renewable is that? Not very. We have to recognize that sustainability, I keep hearing people talk about sustainability. You know, how sustainable is it to destroy the farmland we need to feed ourselves? It's insane. This really, really, really has to stop. When I drive around and I see these giant solar panel developments on farmland, it just makes me almost tear my hair out. Now that said, as one other candidate here said a moment ago, if somebody wants to build, you know, one solar panel to help on their own land with their own money to charge the batteries in their house or something like that, I have no problem with that. Finally, regarding climate change, I used to teach this, okay, for many years. The only thing about climate that is constant is that it never stops changing, period. And it's not us changing it.
Okay, that's it. That was Mark. Mark gets the first whack at this one. How will you support grain-based renewable fuel production in Ontario? Did you hear that?
Yeah, no, could you repeat that, please?
Yep. How will you support grain-based renewable fuel production in Ontario?
The Ontario Party wants to get everybody put back to work. So in terms of just green-based policy, that's something we're still working on in that regard, to be perfectly honest. I mean, for us, we want to get cost of energy, period, cheap as possible, whether that be green-related or whether that be just our natural resources. So I don't have a great answer for that. I'm sorry, I wish I could give you better.
Candace, go ahead.
Yeah, I will echo kind of what I said before about making sure that we have, that we are being stewards, good stewards of the land. And if this is something that we have farmers who are wanting to invest in this is that we're hoping to have the renewable energy sustainability is always going to be the lens that we're going to go with, and it's going to be, we want to make sure that if this is a situation where farmers are hoping to go forward with this, we will be there alongside them for any time that we're hoping to have these conversations. We're making decisions at a table. We need these voices to be heard, and I am going to be there again, always going to make sure that your voice is heard at these tables. I will negotiate this on your behalf. And as I said, our lens of sustainability is going to be is always, every time we want to put out a plan, that is how we're going to have, that's how our view is going to be. So we want to make sure everybody has a voice at the table.
That's good. Maybe just, if there's a little confusion here, because so what we're talking there is like ethanol made from corn or biodiesel made from soybeans and that grain-based energy systems. So, sorry to the first two, I should have maybe cleared that up.
No, it's a good question. I remember I've read about corn and ethanol and how basically the government does incentives. So they say you have to have a certain amount of ethanol in the gas. So it's like creating a market for ethanol, okay? And I've heard it doesn't, like the amount of energy it takes to make the corn and turn it into ethanol, it's not really worth it, and it's just a government program. I don't know. But what I'm saying is if it's just a government created demand to keep farmers busy, in the long run, it might not be a great business to be in, let's say. But if the technology gets better and you can do other stuff for ethanol instead of just corn, maybe the waste, like the waste product from the farms and all that. So it depends on the business case. But if where it's government created demand saying we need this much ethanol no matter what, if it's good or bad, they don't mind. And if it's a government created demand, I'm a little suspicious. If there's a good business case and the farmers want to do it, then it's something we should pursue. But I've heard a lot of kind of sketchy stuff about ethanol, if it's worth the energy that's put into. So I'd have to look into it more, but the business case, if it's there, great. If not, if it's an artificial business case, then I'm a little suspicious and we have to look into it.
Thanks, Tom. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, the answer is a hard no. We don't do subsidies, we don't target industries, we don't do corporatism, we don't do any of this. This has to be led by the market. If there's a case to be made by the farmer, having analyzed his cost and input, and he would know best, then by all means. But no government intervention. This, again, reeks of central planning. And central planning has such an abysmal track record that only politicians or academics would dare to try to defend it. I mean, we saw countless boondoggles in this country of politicians who decided, I mean, Trudeau today announced $4 billion for high-speed train. Mark my word, this is going to be an unmitigated disaster if it happens, okay? But notice, politicians play this game where they can engage in what's called a one-sided bet. Right? They come out with something that sounds nice, which may get some of you to vote for them. That's the upside. What is the downside if it doesn't work? Zero. They don't go to jail, they don't pay a fine, right? They walk scot-free. We have to get away from this. These one-sided bets are dangerous because it gets them to get involved in central planning without any consequences. And that's a recipe for disaster.
Definitely agree with how politicians work.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. Supporting grain-based renewable fuel production in Ontario is essential for both our agriculture sector and our environmental goals. Ontario's corn and soybean farmers have been pivotal in this effort, supplying feedstocks for ethanol and biodiesel production. For instance, IGPC Ethanol Inc. in Elmer expanded its operations to produce 380 million liters of ethanol annually, utilizing 36 million bushels of Ontario corn. This not only provides a substantial market for local grain farmers, but also contributes significantly to renewable energy supplies. And to further bolster this industry, it's crucial to invest in local processing infrastructure, enabling more Ontario-grown grains to be refined with the province. This approach reduces transportation costs and supports local economies. Additionally, stable provincial incentives are necessary to encourage farmers and produce to engage in renewable fuel initiatives without the uncertainty of fluctuating policies. Collaborative efforts between government, industry, stakeholders, and farming communities can drive innovation and ensure that Ontario remains a leader in grain-based renewable fuel production. And by prioritizing these strategies, we can enhance energy security, provide robust markets for our grain farmers, and make meaningful progress toward our environmental objectives.
Keith?
Well, first off, I would echo some of the other candidates here in saying subsidies, no, out of the question. Any new type of fuel that someone wants to try and bring to market, fine. If you can bring it to market and in an economically viable and competitive way without damaging our farmland or anything like that, and if the fuel that you produce is not highly polluting, fine, go ahead and do it. I couldn't care less, but no, you're not going to get any government subsidies if I have anything to say about it. Because if you cannot produce that stuff without government subsidies, then it's not viable. It's not like we're short on energy sources in Canada with the natural gas we have and the oil and the uranium, because the future, I know some people here are going to have a fit when I say this, the future of energy is nuclear, okay? And we're going to be using natural gas and oil and other things. Maybe some biofuel too. Sure, why not? If you can do it and make money at it, and if you can get it to market, perfect. But we have all of these other sources of fuel in our country that make us so rich, or should be making us so rich, if we could build some pipelines, and if we could build some more nuclear plants. So basically, to sum it all up, if somebody wants to build a business producing fuel for internal combustion engines using grains, I have zero problem with it. As long as it doesn't damage the environment, it doesn't destroy farmland, and you don't come to the taxpayer asking for money, claiming that it's because it's a renewable fuel and you're going to save the planet. You're not going to save the planet. The planet doesn't care about you all that much, to be perfectly honest with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Keith. Rachel?
Just to add on a bit more to what Nathan was mentioning at the back there, our Liberal Party does absolutely support this. Biofuels are environmentally friendly, and it will also reduce our dependence on international fossil fuels while creating jobs. So absolutely, our platform does support that.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with the next question, and this time we'll start with Candace. So, what would you do to support new rural economic development?
We have a couple of plans that I did mention before. We're going to restore the power of the conservation authorities, and we're going to protect prime farmland, and we'll stop land grabs like the Greenbelt and also in Wilmot. And we're going to focus development in sensibly, cost-effectively within existing urban boundaries. We're also planning on delivering the Ojibwe National Urban Park in Windsor, which will transfer provincial lands immediately to complete this new urban park. And with rural development, I know we're also hoping to have more, we're going to be supplying more housing. We have a Homes Ontario plan, which is going to build hundreds and thousands of homes within the next few years. These will be permanently affordable homes throughout Ontario, not just in urban landscapes. It'll also be rural, and that's.
Thanks, Candace. Tom?
So yeah, we definitely got to get the next generation into the farming, and the generation after that. So I think the best way to do it is obviously no war on farmers, so they can concentrate on growing food and tending to their animals, and also technology to run the farms is we got to make sure our farmers are the most technologically advanced, most educated, and right up to date on everything, so we can compete with the rest of the world. There's no reason we can't. We have a great workforce. So let's instead of going to the plant to work, they can go to a farm, and instead they're not going to be plowing the field, but they'll be working on some $1 million machinery on a computer, AI, and all that. Lots of potential. So it's not going to be like the old days where you've got dirt, you're all dirt, full of dirt, and you're going to be on a computer, you're going to be doing AI, drones, everything. We got to be on top of that. We got to be ahead of that, and it'll make farming more fun. The kids will love it. Drones and robots and all that stuff. So technology is a big thing, and also land developers, Doug Ford's best friends. We got to keep them away. Even in Sarnia, you look. There's a lot of land in Sarnia and a lot of land in the surrounding municipalities. There's no reason we should be bulldozing over farmland to build subdivisions. And, land developers have a lot of power in Ontario. They have a lot of power everywhere. So we got to strike a really good balance. Like in Sarnia, there's lots of developed land that can be developed within the city already. There's no reason we should be racing farmland. So a little technology and keep the land developers at bay.
Thank you, Tom. Doug?
The premise of the question is once again based on the assumption that central planning works. It does not. It has a terrible, terrible track record. It treats people, the people in the audience here, like peons that need to be ordered around, and please do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to subsidize that. It does not work. Let me give you I could come up with dozens of historic ones, but let me give you a contemporary example. Argentina, until very recently, was a basket case. High unemployment, inflation through the roof, rent that were sky high, and all kinds of other ailments as well. Now they had a libertarian president who, when he came to power, he didn't come up and say, gee whiz, things are terrible here, and I think it's because the government is just too small, right? We need more taxes, we need more regulation to really turn things around. Of course not. Completely the opposite. It is amazing what people, once they're free, can do. You just have to look at what is going on in Argentina. Inflation is down. He's balanced the budget for the first time in 12 years. Employment is up. Rent, because one of the things he did, there were all kinds of regulations where you couldn't, rent your room, you can do this, you can do that. Like again, right? The people in government knowing better. And he did away with this. And thousands upon thousands of rooms came to the market and prices came down. Again, don't buy into this thing that the government needs to direct you. Ask for freedom. And once you get freedom, amazing things will happen. Amazing positive things.
Thanks, John. Nathan?
One of the tricks of the Conservative government is to act like they're supporting, and so they give grants and subsidies. So, for instance, $14 billion to Volkswagen, and it's a trick because they look good. They're supporting jobs, they're doing all this kind of stuff. But what ends up happening is this is how capitalism is destroying North America at this point. It's because it starts to, all the funding actually goes into the large corporations, and they get larger and larger, and then the small guys get pressed out. And rural economic development doesn't happen when politicians just throw money at big corporations to get all the media attention that they're supporting jobs or supporting these kinds of things, and hope it trickles down into the communities. So to actually support rural growth, we need to expand access to funding and grants for small businesses and farmers so they can start to expand and stay local. We need to invest in rural infrastructure, roads, internet, and transit, because if people can't live and work here, then they'll leave. And we need to push for more local processing and manufacturing so we're not just exporting raw materials while jobs go somewhere else. Too often, rural Ontario gets ignored while funding and policies are designed for cities. So if we want real economic growth, it needs to start with investing in the people and the small businesses that are already here, not waiting for big companies to swoop in and save us.
Thank you, Nathan.
Sorry.
I'll give you this one, but it's in the.
Back in 2022, when I was running, I was consulting the OFA website, and I saw some very interesting discussion about establishing agri-food hubs locally in rural communities to process food close to the source of the food. And that made me think back to when I was a kid living in Wallaceburg, a town of 10,000 people at the time, and we had a Libby's plant, and we had a Heinz plant, and we had a sugar beet processing factory. And it created a lot of jobs in town, and it helped the town to flourish. And I think this is a brilliant idea, and I would love to work with the rural community on this in Sarnia-Lambton and all over southwestern Ontario. The idea of establishing, and without any subsidies, but with good planning and maybe some changes in regulation, we could establish or have established local food processing hubs that would bring some of the $50 billion of GDP generated by the agri-food industry every year in Ontario, bring some of that back to our local communities, along with some of the 800,000 jobs that are generated every year or that are supported every year by the agri-food industry. Bring some of that home. Your town will grow a little bit. Your kids growing up in the community are going to find work locally, seasonally sometimes, maybe full-time, and it's going to generate more property tax, and you're going to have better infrastructure, and it's just going to be a really, really good thing. That's one way that I would see to, invigorate or reinvigorate the rural areas here. And I think it would, we're talking food processing plants here. We're not talking EV battery plants, right? So it's going to fit in nicely with the community, and I think it would probably save a lot of money for consumers, because if you process the food locally and then ship it out to market, it's going to cost a whole lot less overall in transportation than taking it to Leamington or something and then shipping it back out.
Thank you, Keith. Rachel?
I also did read about the agri-food processing, and I think that that's an excellent way of sustaining within our own rural community without outsourcing. I also know that Brigden is the home of the Brigden Fair, and that this is what a lot of people do on Thanksgiving weekend, and encouraging agritourism and tourism in general in the rural community is essential to really showcase and market what it is to live out in a rural county and what home is. It's really a passion for the land, it's a passion for your neighbors. I grew up out in the country, so I can say you live very differently. You live very, very, very differently out in the country. You know who your neighbors are. You can be gone for 2 or 3 days at a time, and your neighbors are watching the property for you. It's just a different way of doing life, and it's the appreciation for the people and the passion that they have for what they do, and recognizing that the urban community has its boundaries, and it does not disassociate us from what we appreciate that the urban community can offer and support, but really that the agricultural community is unique and its sustainability is essential, and that's protecting the land so that those that love the land can remain on the land.
Thank you, Rachel. Mark?
Whether you're talking about urban or whether you're talking about rural, the challenges, even though the lifestyles are completely different, the challenges are the same. To invest, you need more money. I'm not an economist, but that just makes sense. Instead of these ideas, and some of these ideas are absolutely great, how about maybe rolling back fees? How about cutting back regulations, and then maybe even a cut to the PST, just to help people put more money in their pocket. I could go on for another minute and a half talking about whatever, but until people have more money in their pocket, and none of the three parties seem interested in allowing you to have money in your pocket, nothing's gonna change in that regard.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, this question, we're gonna start with Tom. Do you, your party, support expansion of supply management?
Supply management, yes. I need to learn more about supply management. I know Donald Trump hates supply management, and that's probably gonna come up in the talks. So, am I in favor of continuing it or increasing it? Is that what you asked?
You get, in here it says expansion, but continuing
Okay.
or expanding, one or the
Okay, it's a very complicated issue. I don't like when I hear about like 1 million liters of milk being dumped down the drain and stuff like that. I guess that happens in supply management. So I'm more of a free market guy with this. I think we can compete, but obviously there has to be certain protections for the Canadian market. It's a long-standing issue with the Americans. Pretty sure Donald Trump promised the Wisconsin farmers he's going to go after it. Well, that's how he won Wisconsin, maybe. But yeah, I have to look into it more. I've heard good things about it, and I've heard negative things about it. So that's what I mean. Like, I'm not a farmer, so I'm going to learn more about it. So undecided still.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay, that's a hard no from us as well. Because it's on balance, of course, there's no doubt some people benefit from this, but on balance, it's not a good thing. The consumers pays too much. I was looking at the New Zealand experience. They had supply management until the 1980s, when the government went almost bankrupt. They had to stop because they were subsidizing it in many ways, many agricultural products. They couldn't do it anymore and decided to do something else. And it's absolutely remarkable what has happened. Yes, some farmers did go bankrupt. It was difficult for some of them, but many of them did way better, to the fact that New Zealand, which 4 or 5 million people, is a massive exporter now of milk, dairy products, meat. It's an absolutely amazing success story. So, yes, when people get used to something, yes, it's difficult to get away from it. But again, this is smacking the central planning of government getting involved, and it never ends well, and this needs to change.
Thank you, John. Nathan?
I'm open to expanding supply management where it makes sense and actually benefits farmers, not just corporations and shareholders and the rich getting richer. But I want to work directly with farmers to see where it could help stabilize prices, protect local production, and ensure the system supports those who grow the food, not just those who sell it.
Thank you. Keith? I won't give you this one because it's undecided.
Okay. Well, regarding supply management, in principle, I'm not really in favor of supply management. I'm very much a free market sort of guy. So I would tend to be, unless I would listen to arguments about expanding it, I would certainly listen to arguments and discuss about it. But in principle, my starting position would be expanding it. I don't think so. On the other hand, continuing it, one thing we need to realize is that whether you like supply management or not, there are a lot of farmers who have built their business model on supply management. And we can't just go in and pull the rug out from under them from one day to the next and completely destroy their business model and possibly drive them into bankruptcy. So I'm not a militantly anti-supply management guy by any means. But expanding it, I think I would definitely want to have some in-depth discussion and ask for justifications of why it would even be needed in the first place.
Thanks, Keith. Rachel?
Our party does support the supply expansion of supply management, looking at though ensuring that there is an equitable or stable balance between those that are producing and those that are remarketing. It's about a balance and equitable process. It's not definitely something that needs to advantage one party over the other, or one individual over the other.
Thanks, Rachel. Go ahead, Mark.
The points that my libertarian colleague and the blue colleague made are very good points. I'm a free market guy myself as well. And I mean, I wouldn't want to pull the rug out from underneath anyone who's built their business around supply management, but myself as well. I'm a free market guy, so I would not want to see it expanded either.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll also profess that I'm not an expert on supply management, but I know that it does help farmers by keeping, the U.S. out of our market, right? So that it is just Canadian farmers. They are producing, and they are the market, the game in town, right? And I do know of a Quebec community of farmers that had been struggling. I think this was a few years ago. And an MPP had actually helped them with developing a plan involving supply management that actually worked for the local farmers. So I know that it does benefit. And again, we need to make sure that we have the plans in place that benefit our farmers, our local farmers, and also benefit our communities.
Thank you, Candace. Okay, so the next question, we're going to start with Jacques with this one. Is there some parameter or reasons that you would support expropriation of farmland?
No. But let me expand then. I mean, one of the tragedies of the repatriation of the Constitution back in 1982, I believe, by Trudeau father. Surprisingly, because I was no fan of the guy, but surprisingly, he wanted to entrench the protection of private property in the Constitution. And he had to put water in his wine because the provinces would go along. See, the provinces wanted to be able to retain the right to expropriate people. Some very nice people, right? I mean, we want to be able to continue to really stick it. And that's why private property rights
ultimately justifiable, and if the landowner is willing to negotiate, fine, but that's not expropriation, that's purchase. And that's it, end of story, no expropriation, no.
Thank you, Keith. Rachel?
I think we're all going to tell you no, and I think for valid reasons that you're hearing the no's. I did listen to quite a bit about this Wilkesport particular incident, and under any sort of leadership role that I ever have, and whether that's partnering and backing the successful candidate of this riding, it will be absolutely no. Will you ever be manipulated in any way, shape, or form, or have someone knock on your door and convince you that this is a profitable idea? Reading and hearing about some of the personal stories that people have experienced with the idea that taking your land is to an advantage for you is deplorable, absolutely deplorable, and I would never stand behind that as an individual, never mind as a party. I did sadly speak to somebody who did sell their land on the premise that they were 92 years old, and had no family to share the family land with. So felt, almost outcasted out of the community because they made a decision to sell 372 acres. So it's definitely a sad story that that's the way the community perceived it to be, but that is nothing that I would ever stand behind. And whether I win or lose, I would support those in leadership to ensure this did not happen to any of you or anyone in my family.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Mark?
I wouldn't have had it on my bingo card that probably everyone at this table would find something else other than Bob to agree on tonight, but obviously running for the Ontario Party, being a party trying to reduce government, of course, it would be a hard no from us as well too. I mean, if we start losing our land to the government, we've gone down a road that we may never come back from. So of course it would be a hard no on expropriation.
Thank you, Mark. Candace?
Well, I think this question is unfortunate that it has to be asked. And I think that it is due to the Ford government's track record of doing these behind doors, shady deals of land grabs to his wealthy developer friends. And we need to make sure that we elect a government, our NDP, we as the Ontario NDP, we are going to continue to fight against these land grabs like we did with the Greenbelt. We'll continue to fight for Wilmot. We will not allow that to happen. And we will stop any other land grabs that that we may not know that Doug Ford has already put in place. But like I said, it's the track record we have to look at. We cannot trust this government to be respectful, to be good stewards of our farmland, and it's up to us to elect a government that will make sure that all of our farmland, all of our green spaces are being respected and are being cared for.
Thank you, Candace. Tom?
So definitely a no against expropriation. I read a book on this exact topic in the Soviet Union, how they needed to take the farms and take the land because they needed to raise hard currency to build up their industrial base and their military. So they took the food, they sold it on the market and took the money, and so obviously millions died from starvation, and it was horrible. So it's got a really bad history of governments doing it. Having said that, we can't be complacent. It could happen again. Like we had in the Netherlands, I've heard of farms being expropriated for climate change. I don't know if that's true. I don't live in the Netherlands, but Netherlands, a lot of stories coming out about the agriculture there. So now we have Mark Carney, ultra-globalist Mark Carney coming in, and he says he'll do emergency powers to get stuff put in. So you never know what's up their sleeve with expropriation. We can't be complacent because they have this thing where they have to tell us how to live, what to eat, how we grow our food. So expropriation for these guys, these globalists, and Mark Carney is a globalist. I don't even think, he's got 3 passports? So for them, expropriation isn't out of the question, trust me. For me it is, but we cannot be complacent because it's going on. I've heard it's going on in Netherlands, and it could happen here as long as if we take our eye off the wheel and don't keep an eye on them. Because he did say that. He said emergency for emergency investments or emergency powers too. So got to keep an eye. Can't be complacent. No to expropriations.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, this next question, we start with Nathan. This is a bit of a long one, so listen, and if you need me to repeat it, I definitely will. Okay, many opinions have been expressed for and against agriculture subsidies. Current Ford government has added $150 million to the risk management program to support farmers. How would you support Lambton farmers against global market pressure and climate change goals?
I believe that public resources, subsidies, have a role to play in healthy communities. So each issue that we go on, whether that be for farms, whether that be for journalism, whether that be for media and those kinds of pieces, I think it's a case-by-case basis. So I don't think there's just I'm an anti or pro-subsidy kind of person, but I do know that when I'm sitting in those committee rooms and when I'm trying to fight for what Sarnia-Lambton wants, is that where subsidies make sense to actually bring balance to power and to how governments and our economic systems have disproportionately supported corporations and the wealthy, I think subsidies can be used as a powerful tool to help bring that balance back and to create healthier communities.
Thank you, Nathan. Keith?
Okay, I see a couple of questions in that one question. First, regarding, I believe it was protection from foreign competition, is that what it was?
Global market.
Global market, yes. Well, I think one thing we have to, I'm basically a free market kind of guy, but when we're dealing with international markets, sometimes we also have to recognize that we might be dealing with competitors internationally who are not competing fairly. And they might be subsidizing, for instance, their farmers and then exporting the food at a cheaper cost, and even sometimes exporting it at a loss just to destroy to take over the market and destroy the local producers and then replace them. So we have to keep our eyes open for that, and there is a tool that can be used very easily. It's something that we've been hearing a little bit about lately. It starts with a T. Tariffs, yeah. I think in some cases tariffs could be justifiable to protect our agricultural industry. And we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Then there was the issue of the government funding dealing with climate change or something.
No, it was a funding went into the risk management program.
Risk management, managing what sort of risks? This is something we're not
The
familiar
risk
with.
management program is like an insurance or farmers pay into it, and then it takes the hills and valleys out of global markets especially for industries that operate on a world basis.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not too sure that I'd have to look at that one more closely. That's something I'm not super familiar with. But I think that could be dealt with probably more efficiently by using tariffs to protect your market when it's clear that your farmers, your producers are dealing with unfair competition. Now, if the farmers, the producers are contributing to that fund, oh, have I run out of my time? Okay, sorry. If the farmers are contributing to that fund, and it's like a cooperative sort of thing.
Farmers do contribute to the fund, and then the government puts money into, and it's there. It draw on it at times, and
Well, I'd have to look at the.
yeah,
whether
we'll
we-
pass it on to Rachel.
Sorry,
Keep
Mr.
rolling.
Ross.
Give you an extra 30 seconds because George is talking.
Yeah, I kind of
I think when we are having to invest money into an insurance program, it's telling us that we have concerns that are on the rise. If the government is saying suddenly we need to put another large chunk of billions of dollars as an investment into an insurance program, that tells me that they're even concerned themselves about the instability for the actual farmers themselves, and that would be very concerning to me. Not to say that this is not a program that has its benefits, but programs that have their benefits where we invest billions and billions of dollars suddenly it's conflicting in its purpose, right? A farmer wants to be sustainable. They want to appreciate and value what they have, but if it's a constant threat and it needs to be under an insurance policy, my suggestion is that the current programs are not working.
Thank you, Rachel. Mark?
The quickest way for the government to help out and to help with these sort of subsidies is basically clean up its own house. You know, you have to, again, come back to the basics and obviously be transparent with your funding so that you can subsidize these things in that regard. So, I mean, you know, yeah, that'd be the best way to put it, is obviously keep your own house in order. So then that way you can provide the farmers the subsidies that they need. And then if you have to support them in terms of tariffs, you can help them out that way as well.
Thanks, Mark. Candace?
I have maybe two answers. It's a big question, but a couple of things to contribute. We are going to, as the Ontario NDP, we are supportive of the risk management program because it does protect Ontario farmers and the jobs that they support. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to remove the cap on the risk management program. So it's currently capped at 40%. There will be no cap if we're elected. And also, so the second part to that is we don't want to penalize farmers for they have on-farm climate smart practices already, and we don't agree with penalizing farmers for they already are sustainable. They already have proven sustainable practices. And so the current system that we have here in Ontario with the carbon tax, it doesn't take that into effect. It doesn't take into effect how sustainable our farmers are. And unfortunately, they are just being treated as the biggest pollutants. You know, they're getting lumped in with all of the biggest, whoever is guilty of being the biggest pollutant in Ontario. And we don't think that that's fair. And, you know, hopefully we can maybe look at other models out there. If we talk about Manitoba, or BC. BC has the cap and trade, which was canceled by Doug Ford when he took power. We had the cap and trade model here in Ontario, and now we're spending millions on lawsuits because of that, because people sued Doug Ford when he canceled it. So.
Thanks, Candace. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, in a perfect world, we wouldn't need tariffs or subsidies, but we're not in a perfect world. Ideally, with tariffs, it'd be nice to get access to the U.S. market or to the European market without, have a reciprocal deal where we don't have tariffs. But if there is a instance where there is unfair practices, we have to protect our farmers. Subsidies, I'm a little wary of subsidies because it can be market distorting. There is times when it is appropriate. Like, I'll give you an example, the Ukraine war that's been going on. It really raised the price for fertilizer and inputs for farmers. So that could have been an example where they could have gotten, like, it's not that it was out of their control. They didn't do anything, but they're suffering. I'm pretty sure a lot of inputs went up when that war started. So there is a room for subsidies, but there is a danger of becoming over dependent on them and having it distort the market. So I think trying to encourage farmers, not encourage, but help them be as efficient as possible so we can compete on the world stage. And also even open up local markets, like make it easier for them to sell here. Processing, like meat processing centers and stuff like that. Like I know a lot of people here would love to buy a steak from a local farmer and make it easier. So all those things can work together. It's a complicated issue. It's not going to be an easy issue because the states, they do subsidize their farmers a lot. The Europeans subsidize their farmers. So it's really tricky, but I think you have to really try not to be too dependent because it can distort your market, but we do have to protect our farmers. So, very difficult.
Thank you, Tom. John?
So instead of subsidies, what we favor very much is to remove all the problems that the government has imposed on you. Harry Brown once said that the government is an entity that first breaks your leg and then shows up with a wheelchair passing itself off as your savior, right? The government is taxing you too much, regulates you too much. The red tape is crippling. Now, let's put something in perspective. If you are a small operator and you have to do the same amount of compliance and red tape as a much larger one, your unit costs in terms of having to shoulder this are much, much greater, right? So this is an automatic advantage to larger producers. That's not right. And by the way, this is way more than just the farming community. You wouldn't believe the number of new enterprises that struggle simply because, again, the unit cost of regulations and red tape and compliance is so overwhelming that they cannot compete with well-established companies. This is, in economics, it's a well-recognized phenomenon. And as long as the government doesn't understand this, I mean, Thomas Sowell once said that the first rule of economics is to recognize that we live in a world of scarcity, right? We don't have enough wealth, we don't have time to do everything that we want. The first rule of politics is to ignore the first rule of economics, right? Like most of the people at this table, they don't understand. Like they think that regulations cost nothing, that they take no time, right? They don't take you away from productive endeavor. Filling out forms is not productive. It adds absolutely nothing to the process. But they keep piling in 400,000 regulations in Ontario. Think about that for a minute. 400,000. You could review 1,000 regulations per day, and you wouldn't be done after a year. And yet they want to add more.
Okay, thank you, John. So our next question is, how will you or your party provide support to offset the rising cost of food production, i.e. trucking, taxes, carbon tax, fertilizer tax, etc.? Yeah. How will you or your party provide support to offset the rising cost of food production, i.e. fertilizer, trucking, carbon tax?
Yeah, well, the first thing we would do would be to look at reducing taxes and other things that are resulting in the increasing cost of production. That would include the cost of fuel, for instance. We have to take carbon tax on carbon. It makes me almost gag just to say the word carbon tax or the phrase carbon tax, which is just a ridiculous misnomer. It's not carbon that these people are screeching about, it's CO2, which is plant food, and which represents 0.04% of the atmosphere, of which 5% of that 0.04% is put there by human beings. But all that aside, we have to look at the taxes, the regulations, the over-regulations, the bureaucracy. These are the things that are driving the costs up. We need to get in there and trim all those things down, make things more transparent and simple, and lower the cost of the energy that's needed at every step of the way for transportation and plowing and seeding and everything else. And I think that's the solution right there. We bring the prices down by eliminating all of the government intervention and taxes, etc., that are driving the prices up.
Thank you, Keith. Rachel?
I think it's very important to recognize, I know everybody's very concerned about the current situation as it relates to taxes. The discussions around carbon tax are very significant, and it's had a significant impact on the entire province. We'll just limit it at that because this is a provincial election. We cannot ignore that this has happened, and I know that my Liberal leader has announced that the carbon tax will be removed, and I believe that's on Carney's agenda as well. I can't speak, obviously that comes before me, and I feel it, I know it, I understand it, I have family that are living it, and it has increased their costs on all levels, creating challenges that have at times been unmanageable. And I think moving forward, what needs to happen is to allow the increased independence back to where it used to be, allowing individuals to have tax credits. Every business, every individual has some level of tax credits, and I think the powerhouse that the agricultural industry really is has not been recognized for what it represents. And there is the necessary, we have talked about the insurance program, increasing the insurance program is one avenue, but ensuring that there's tax credits that are applicable to what the season brought or didn't bring is another. And I think we discussed climate change and many other questions, but at the same time, it's so unpredictable at this point, and what the outcome is or what it's not going to be. But I think the biggest part is what does the future look like, and it's really allowing and enabling the young generation to come in, and maybe if they're not an family generational farmer, but they have the ability to come in and buy farmland if that becomes a passion of theirs, and that's not a realistic goal at this point. So making the market much more feasible for those that want to enter farming, that's been a question that's come brought to me.
Thank you, Rick. Mark?
The Liberals have no intention of removing the carbon tax. They'll repackage it, they'll call it something else, and in lieu of a federal vote, they will tell you they're going to get rid of it. But make no mistake, it's too big of a cash cow. It's put too much money in their pockets to spend on their whims, to take it away. The Ontario Party is strictly about Ontario first. The Ontario Party is your best choice that will fight Ottawa on the carbon tax. We will remove the carbon tax provincially and get rid of it. It's quite simply, it's about the economy, and it's about putting money back in people's pockets. It's just that simple.
Thank you, Mark. Candace?
By 2030, it's estimated that up to $2.7 billion of carbon tax will be paid by Ontario grains and oilseed farmers. And as I said before, this is acting as a penalty to our farmers who are employing sustainable measures. Their carbon footprint is almost neutral. That is the goal. And so why are they being penalized for that, right? As I said, Doug Ford had canceled cap and trade when he came into power. And now, if we look at BC, they have been implemented cap and trade, which provides opportunity for farmers to earn carbon credits by implementing the sustainable agricultural practices they're already doing. That puts money back in their pockets. It doesn't take it away. And I feel like BC is an NDP government, and we would want to look at having a similar model here in Ontario. It's definitely worth the conversation, and again, I would want to make sure that everybody is at the table when we have those conversations, because what Doug Ford did not benefit anybody, any of the farmers here in Ontario. So we need to rethink that. And I'm definitely going to be willing to have those conversations, and the Ontario NDP will also want to take a look at those different models.
Thank you, Candace. Tom?
So to reduce costs for farmers and for everybody, but farmers have seen a lot of cost increases. So the first thing we need to do is money printing. No more money printing. We've printed way too much money at the federal level. We've taken on a lot of debt in Ontario as well. During COVID, they printed billions and billions and billions, and they handed out billions, and now they want to do it again with this potential trade war. So, and We have Mark Carney coming in, I keep mentioning him, because he's a money printer, he loves printing money. And that weakens our dollar, raises all our costs. So that's one thing that's gotta stop. And he's a money printer, this guy. We gotta worry. And Doug Ford and his deficits, so we gotta get that under control. And that would maybe keep inflation, like get it to go down. Also the carbon tax, it's gotta go, all of that stuff. Like he says carbon, I sound like Pierre now. He says he's gonna get rid of it, but really he's just gonna repackage it. Because if you listen to the way the guy talks, it's like he wants to financialize and basically itemize every carbon spec that you use and have it in some kind of database. So I'm sure he's got plans for farmers too. So that adds costs to farmers, the carbon tax. And another thing I would do is resources, natural resources, get the price of oil down, exploit our resources, and that way we'll have more tax revenue and we won't have to print money. So everybody's costs go down. It's pretty simple.
Thank you, Tom. John?
I would like to thank you for providing me with a question where I can expand on my example of a broken leg, because it's difficult to find a better example, right? The government comes along and taxes the living daylights out of you, regulates you, increases all your costs. I mean, I haven't done the math, but the government's got to be a very significant contributor to the increase in input costs. And suddenly, wow, well, we've crippled you so badly, we have to come in with some kind of subsidy. The wheelchair. This happens all the time. It has to stop. I mean, consider how unproductive the whole thing is. First we create a problem, then they have to create a whole infrastructure, hiring people who are going to manage this program to help. I mean, it's so counterproductive. Just let people be. Stop taxing them, stop regulating them, stop with the red tape, and then you don't have to come in with subsidies. But in many ways, right, this is a power trip for many of these people. Because if they actually believe in free markets, they wouldn't have a job. So they have to cling this idea that we need the government, that they need to somehow tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Even though, of course, they're not farmers, they haven't got a clue on how to do it. But you do. You should have the freedom to act in the way that you see it best.
Thank you, John. Nathan?
The cost of food production is rising because farmers are getting squeezed from every angle. Fuel prices, input costs, taxes, unpredictable trade policies, and corporate price setting that favors processors over producers. So I just have three things that I do. One, expand risk management programs like we were talking about earlier, invest in local processing and supply chains, and one that hasn't come up yet, but I think is really important, is push back against corporate grocery monopolies that are raking in record profits while farmers get paid less.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay, this is our last question. So after this question, then we will go to closing statements. And so this question is going to start with Rachel. Closing statements will start with Nathan. So this question is, what is you or your party's plan to improve rural health care?
Oh, that's my baby. Healthcare is the heart of me. The Liberal government is what revitalized and sustained the Charlotte Engelhard property for Blue Water Health, and it is still there because of the Liberal Party, and I am very proud to say that. We have a new hospital in Sarnia-Lambton because of the Liberal Party as well. That decision was made under our government before those changes to a Conservative government. What needs to happen is the mobilization, immediate mobilization of health teams and the recruitment and retention of frontline workers, healthcare physicians primarily, providing that primary care, and a significant level of integration. Each working professional is now really beginning to truly actualize one another's potential and how the partnerships among professions can create a much more efficient system, but we don't have the human resource. This is the concern. We've limited medical school enrollments, we don't have the medical schools, and we are heavily relying on internationally educated people to come here and mobilize our healthcare system. And that's not what we should be doing when our own Canadians are heading out internationally to be educated. They need to be here in our communities, educating in our facilities and serving the communities where they want to live. This is where they grew up, and many people are forced out of this community to find a job in their sector or to be educated and end up landing their long-term employment arrangements there because it seems much more sustainable at that point. Healthcare is the health of the community. If we do not have a healthcare system that can take care of us, we will all need it at one point. We will all need it at one point, and it needs to be there when you need it. You don't need to be waiting in line like you do for every service today any longer. The wait times need to stop, and we need to help your community today.
Thank you, Rachel. Mark?
Probably the best way to get healthcare, considering the fact that the problem's its biggest expense, would be, again, like with many other things, is get in and take a look at, go through the books and find the efficiencies and the duplications and the waste. Because if we assume there's no waste or anything of that nature going on, we're just being naive. We don't need nice atriums. We need professionals. We need to hire back unvaccinated doctors and nurses that were unceremoniously let go for no reason. Like Rachel said, we need more professionals. We need to find them wherever we can. In 2021, we had 1 million people in Ontario with no family doctor. That number is now hovering around 2.5 million. There's a number of things that go into it, and it'd be nice and easy to wave a magic wand at it and just solve the problem. But the problem is you people pay more than enough in taxes. You have to find a government that's willing to be efficient and be accountable for your money. And until that happens, this carousel is just going to continue to go round and round.
Thank you, Mark. Candace?
We are in a healthcare crisis, thanks to the current government and previous governments before them. This is a topic that is at the top of mind when I talk to people at the doors, on the phones. They are telling me how long they have to wait to see their family doctor, how long they have to wait in an ER to see a doctor, how long they have to wait for a hospital bed. The wait times are now ridiculous, and we deserve better healthcare. Farmers and their families deserve better healthcare and better healthcare options. What we're going to do, the Ontario NDP, we're going to recruit and support 3,500 new family doctors. There are about 10,000 people in Sarnia-Lambton that do not have a primary care provider. And if you don't have that point of contact, then you aren't able to get all the specialist help that you need, right? So we want to make sure that we have enough doctors, and we also want to cut the red tape so that doctors are spending more time with patients and not paperwork. And in our hospitals, we are going to hire more nurses so that we can have safe nurse-to-patient staffing ratios and to make sure that the patients get the care they deserve. We're going to increase funding also to community mental health service providers like CMHA and AMHO. And we're going to establish wage parity for healthcare workers in community settings and rural settings to ensure that these community primary care providers can also offer mental health support. As I said, this is a problem across Ontario, urban and rural, and we want to fix it.
Thank you, Candace. Tom?
Yeah, it is a really complicated problem. Some areas of the province are more difficult to fill positions than others. I think Sarnia's got some issues, but we're not as challenged as others. I lived in Alberta for a year. I was the editor of a newspaper there, and they had the same issue of getting doctors to northern Alberta. Imagine that. It's cold up there. So they were in like bidding wars with doctors with other municipalities. They were offering like, here's a house, here's a free house for a year, here's this, and I think that's not the way to go. I think that's not what we should be doing. I'm sure there's programs that would like pay for tuition if they did a certain amount of years residency in a rural area. That should be continued, obviously. Quality of life, like municipalities have to make the quality of life attractive for doctors to want to settle down there, and also technology. Remote healthcare is going to be huge soon, like with the AI, and like there's stuff you're gonna be able to do on your phone, like you're gonna do a X-ray on your phone and send it to your doctor, and so you won't have to travel hours like a lot of we do now. So we got to invest in that technology that saves the travel time, and like you still have to go to a doctor eventually, but cut down on the trips and still make sure you're being assessed properly and all that. That's going to be a huge market. There's no reason we can't be good at that. Like we can't invest in that and cater that, and even export that technology to other countries for rural healthcare. So yeah, very exciting stuff. Challenging but exciting.
Thank you, Tom. John?
I'm an actuary by trade. One of the things I had to study was demography, and I will tell you, demography is destiny. We are entering an age of a tsunami of demand on the healthcare system. And there's no magic to this. This was predictable. The fact is, today, Ontario is facing a $400 billion unfunded liability for Medicare. It makes me laugh if it wasn't so sad. But to hear the NDP and the Liberal going on about how they're going to fix this problem, they were in power and they never set a cent aside for the tsunami that's coming. What they did was fraudulent. So don't listen to them at all on healthcare, okay? They're fraudsters. Number two, Sean Watley pointed out that Canada has 10 times as many health administrators per capita as Germany does. Now, I'm all for Teutonic efficiency, but my goodness, why hasn't the provincial government sent a team to Germany to find out why they need so fewer health administrators than we do? What we need to do at this point to solve this problem is to tell the federal government to take a hike with its health conditions that stop the delivery of healthcare by the private sector. Dr. Day in BC sued the government, unfortunately lost, but he pointed out that he, like many of his colleagues, are entrepreneurs, and they would do more surgeries if they were allowed to do so. But we have these antiquated laws that prevent people from increasing the supply, which is what we need. We don't need against more central planning. We need to let loose these physicians who want to work more. That's the solution to the problem.
Thank you, John. Nathan?
I'll tell you why we're not sending people to Germany, because then the politicians would be out of jobs too. They'd see how things would get done efficiently. Rural healthcare isn't a priority at Queen's Park, and we are seeing the impact. Fewer doctors, longer wait times, and burned out healthcare workers. We need to expand community health centers. We need to invest in healthcare staffing and secure long-term funding for rural access programs. Right now, the Liberals are pushing for urgent action on rural healthcare. It's great. The NDP wants to recruit 3,500 doctors. That's great. The Greens are calling for expanded nurse practitioner-like clinics. Even better. I can work with any of them as an independent to get real solutions through, because healthcare isn't a party issue, it's a people issue.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. One of the other candidates stole my thunder a little bit on this one, but I'll thunder away anyway. One of the quickest and most efficient ways to increase access to healthcare, and especially in rural communities and smaller communities, is to allow medical practitioners to open privately owned and privately operated clinics. This doesn't mean that you have to go in with your credit card and pay. They can bill the Ontario healthcare system, but they will open and operate these clinics themselves, and they'll do a much more efficient job than any of our public clinics. I lived this for 5.5 years in France when I was studying there, and it was marvelous. It's also a very rural country with lots and lots of small towns. What happens is the people who want to open a clinic, a private one, they look for a market. And they're going to go to places that are underserved by the public healthcare system. And they're going to open a clinic for x-rays or maybe MRIs or CTs or some other sort of diagnostic imagery or something. And people will have it there handy to them, and they'll still be billing the public healthcare system. Okay? We've done that a little bit in Ontario. I used such a clinic right here, well, right over there in Sarnia, not long ago for x-rays. I walked in, showed my health card, I was in and out within a half an hour. Nothing like in a public hospital. It was fantastic. I'll just leave you with one final warning. Whenever the Liberals and the NDP come at you with a solution to healthcare, run away. Run away.
Okay, so that ends our question period tonight because we all want to get through in decent time and have time to socialize and eat cookies so that I don't have to eat them all. So we're going to closing statements and we'll start with me.
3 minutes?
Not the other was cookies.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
I will speed up. I want to thank everyone here for this conversation, but I also want to point out who's not here. Do I need to say his name? For years, Sarnia-Lambton has been ignored by Queen's Park. The biggest issues we face, jobs leaving, farmland under threat, industry uncertainty, rural infrastructure being neglected, are not priorities for the people in Toronto making decisions for us. And Bob, he's just towing his party's line. Here's the difference. Every other candidate at this table, the ones that are here and also the ones that aren't here, answers to their party first, and then their riding. I don't. As an independent, I have the freedom to work with any party, any MPP, and support any policy that makes sense for Sarnia-Lambton. I don't need to wait for permission from a leader to Toronto to get things done. When new legislation is being written, when funding decisions are being made, I can be in the room, working across party lines to actually shape policies instead of just following orders. I don't have to make excuses for bad decisions just because my party made them. Sarnia-Lambton deserves real representation, not another name on a party roll call. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm running.
Okay, I think I'm going to do a bit away from my written statement. First, a word of caution. When you have parties like the NDP and the Liberals who start going on about climate alarmism, and clearly they haven't read the IPCC Working Group 1, if they did, they would come to a different conclusion. And then they use the word existential, okay? They're granting themselves permission to come after you. I was mentioning in my opening remark what happened in the Netherlands, right? Nitrogen restriction, kicking people off their farm, meat restriction, all that type of nonsense. When you believe what they believe, they will come after you, okay? So if you want protection of your farm, we at the Ontario Libertarian Party will stand up. Again, we are going to reduce your taxes, we're going to reduce the regulation, we're going to reduce the red tape, and we will allow you to thrive. Farming is difficult enough because of, volatile prices and uncooperating weather. You don't need the government to make it even more difficult, and that's what is happening right now. It has to be significantly reduced to allow you to flourish. Again, we've spoken about expropriation. That has to stop as well. Your choice is clear. Either we continue down the path of government interference and shortages, or we stand up for freedom, prosperity, and the right to farm without unnecessary government intervention. I stand with the farmer and for freedom, and I hope you will too. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Tom?
Okay, I just want to thank you guys for coming. I had a really good time. Actually, time flew by. So anyway, Ontario, I think we're at a crossroads. On the one end, we got the threat from Donald Trump and his threats on the tariffs and threatening Ontario's manufacturing and agriculture. And on the other hand, we have in Ottawa, the incoming administration, who I believe within the next 5 years, you'll see a war on farmers. You'll see the continuation of trying to reduce fertilizer intake, carbon taxes, just putting all this pressure. So you got two sides really putting pressure on Ontario agriculture. So in the middle, you have Doug Ford and Bob Bailey, who are pretty well incompetent in dealing with Donald Trump. That all they're doing is making it worse, it seems. So, and then we have Mark Carney, who's gonna do his globalist tricks, which will affect agriculture, because agriculture is always on their mind. So we're at a crossroads. We need a party that's gonna stand up for farmers, for manufacturing, and if we have to, firewall Ontario from these intrusions, from Ottawa, from Davos, and from Donald Trump, of course. But we need competent leadership. Right now, I'm afraid of the outcome. What's going to be the outcome as long as Doug Ford and Bob Bailey are in charge. I hope I'm wrong, but we will find out.
Thank you, Tom. Candace?
Well, thanks again for inviting me to participate, and thank you to our moderator. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and dig in with you. I'm not in a race for second place. What I bring to the table is a strong listening ear, the ability to negotiate, and the conviction to stand up for our community. For too long, we have been under the threat of land grabs from greedy developers. Our farmland is in jeopardy, and the Ontario NDP is going to continue to stand with you to stop those land grabs. We're also going to invest in infrastructure. We need roads and bridges that are fixed and workable and functional so that we can get your agricultural goods to where they need to be. And we're also going to make sure that your families, your communities have the supports they need with healthcare, with housing, and with education. So we want to make sure that the agricultural issues from our community, they're not an afterthought in provincial decision making. And the choice is clear for this riding. The NDP is the party of change for Sarnia-Lambton. We can do better, and a vote for me is a vote for change.
Thank you, Candace. Mark?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you for having me. The Ontario Party is the one party that has no party whip. I will work for Sarnia-Lambton. After years of either NDP rule, Liberal rule, or Conservative rule under Doug Ford, although I personally would not call it Conservative rule, the Ontario Party wants to work for you. The Ontario Party will hold Ottawa accountable. The one thing that we haven't talked about tonight, which I realize doesn't affect the rural community directly, is the fact that no party of the three legacy parties will stand up to Ottawa in terms of immigration. Simply a big part of the problem of what we have going on right now is we have too many people. That's why the services are stretched beyond belief. That's why we don't have the money of what's going on. So the Ontario Party's platform is almost too simple. Less government to make it easier for you so you have more money in your pocket. It's just that simple. On the 27th, Ontario will have to make a decision, and hopefully it's not a simple decision. When you take a look at the table tonight, you see 8 people here. Sarnia-Lambton is not a big constituency. So the fact that you have a libertarian, independents, a populist, new blue, a new party like the Ontario Party, it kind of gives you an idea that people are tired of the same 3 parties spreading the same message that now they're barely different anymore. They all work for the party, simply that's it. They don't work for the people. Send someone to Queen's Park who wants to be accountable to the people.
Thank you, Mark. Rachel?
Thank you for having us all here this evening. I would be a very good politician if I told you that this was not intimidating at all. It absolutely is. Coming here today, this evening, had me probably sick to my stomach the entire day. Not because I'm not excited to come and meet everybody, but because agriculture is my home and love, but it's not my area of expertise. So it's definitely pushing one out of its comfort zone. What commitment you'll get from me is that, yes, I am under the Liberal candidacy, but I'm human just the same as you, and this means something to me. This is not a job. I've got a career already, and I'm in this position because there's such a strong need for a change right across the landscape in so many different areas. And I see myself as capable of being that person that will go to Queen's Park, that will advocate for what we need in Sarnia-Lambton. I could sit here and spout out everything the Liberals have put on their provincial platform. What is going to be coming to Sarnia is the question. We can say we're going to build 80,000 houses and we're going to protect this land and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. But what's going to happen in Sarnia-Lambton is what we care about. That's what I care about, and that's what I want to bring to Queen's Park is our concerns and results back for our community. This place is my home. It means something to me and it means something to my family for multiple generations, and I don't plan on moving out of here. I want this to be a place where I can age, where my children can have an education, and where I can retire and retire comfortably and feel safe in my community and not be forced to make decisions one should not have to make. I am your voice, I'm asking for your vote, and whether I am successful or not, I will support the successful candidate because this community matters to me.
Thank you, Rachel. I didn't know I was that intimidating. I scared you all day. Keith?
Ladies and gentlemen, you know and I know that our province is desperately in need of common sense conservative voices in our legislature. There are almost none there right now. To speak up and to forge alliances where possible in order to reinvigorate our economy and create jobs for our young people. We also know that we need those same common sense conservatives to protect our farmland from the unconscionable expropriations that are already going on in Ontario and that will come here too if somebody isn't there to stand up to Doug Ford. Count on it. And to, in general, support our agricultural and rural communities and hopefully bring some value-added food processing back to our communities to reintroduce some wealth. Ladies and gentlemen, this election provides us with an excellent opportunity to send new blue MPPs to reintroduce fiscal sanity in the legislature and in our government. Ford's progressivists, and of course the Liberals and New Democrats, have only one solution for pretty much every problem that comes along, and that is spend, 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 and spend some more, and create more debt for future generations to pay off. We need principled, true conservative MPPs, like myself, to engage actively in the legislature and here at home in order to grow our economy and to create jobs for our youth, as I said before. Please, please, do not sit out this election. The stakes are far too high, and the opportunity to forge a prosperous future is far too great to be wasted. And finally, tomorrow evening at the Sarnia Public Library in the auditorium at 6 p.m. Come on out and join us. You'll get to hear me speak a whole lot more. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, and you can ask me all the questions you want, and I will answer those questions for you. And also again at the Kamlaki Community Center on Monday the 24th at 7.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, but especially this group of people. We have a fine slate of candidates here, of quality candidates, and they've, on fairly short notice, taken time out of their life to come put their ideas forward, to come forward to hopefully give us the opportunity, and they hope for a job that will change their life as they go forward. And I know other countries that are dear to me, where people are dying for the chance we're going to have on Thursday. So whatever we do, let's use it. So thanks everyone for coming.
Hey, Doc.